Okay, I hope everybody had a good weekend and is having a good Monday. The last couple chapters of this book I thought were a really good way to wrap it up. I really enjoyed the read. I thought Turkle touched on some important topics that are going to be more widely discussed in the coming years as the newer generation grows up and we really start to see the results of children being raised with technology. The last time that I wrote a letter probably would have been in my childhood. I used to write letters for my great grandparents, but every Christmas. But after they passed away, that tradition kind of just passed away as well, unfortunately. The difference, though, that I find between letters and emails is that letters are more personal, they feel less formal, they offer an opportunity to use more descriptive language and more informal language, so you can be a little more humorous, you can be a little bit more personable, I guess. And the biggest difference for me is the anticipation of mail day and waiting for that letter to arrive in the mail versus the instant accessibility of an email or a text. I think that's a huge difference. And personally, I think letters are a little bit more intimate. They show a little bit more of yourself to the person that you're writing the letter for because you have to sit down and actually take the time. You have to make the time to write the letter. And I think it's kind of cool too if it's a handwritten letter. You get a little bit of a peek into the kind of person that person writing is just by looking at their handwriting, which I think that's really neat as well. I wish letters were more prevalent, and I wish I had a pen pal to write letters with because that would be pretty cool, especially if they were across the world or something. But tech has made that so easy to talk to somebody across the world that it's kind of made letters seem redundant, but I think that they still have a certain beauty and uniqueness that should be celebrated. I pulled a couple of quotes that stood out to me from the book, starting on page 273, which is right at the beginning of our readings this week. Let me find it right there. It was Brad. He was talking about how he gets confused between what he composes for his online life and who he really is. That was really concerning to me because I've never had that struggle. I wasn't on social media until I was about 12 years old, and right from the get-go I've been very honest about who I am and what I believe in, and I put honest pictures of myself up. The only thing that I am guilty of more so nowadays than I was before is using filters on pictures, especially on Snapchat and stuff like that, but I wouldn't say that confuses me about who I really am. That's not a problem or an identity crisis that I've ever had to face, and I think that is one that newer generations are going to be more often confronted with, I guess, because they're going to grow up both online and in real life. So they are going to have essentially two different selves that they make and put out for the world. And I thought that was interesting. On page 281, oops, I went right by it. Richard, he got disabled by an automobile accident. And he's talking about how some nurses are really cruel, but how he would still rather have a human nurse than a robot nurse. It says, for Richard, being with a person, even an unpleasant, sadistic person, makes him feel that he is still alive. It signifies that his way of being in the world has a certain dignity, even if his activities are radically curtailed. So this stood out to me because I don't really know how I feel about robotic nurses and helpers and caretakers. But I do agree with him that I think I personally would rather have a human. Even if they were horrible, they still have depth to them in a story. Like, that's how he puts it. And to me, that's still a better option than an empty, I guess, pale reflection of a person based on programming. I don't know. That would just feel really lonely, I think. Even if the person taking care of you is horrible, it's still a person and it's still a presence with you, another soul, or, versus just a machine. And then on 288, at the bottom of the page, the last paragraph, this whole paragraph really struck me. And it says, Turkle says, my own study of the network life has left me thinking about intimacy, about being with people in person, hearing their voices and seeing their faces and trying to know their hearts. It has left me thinking about solitude, the kind that refreshes and restores. Loneliness is failed solitude. To experience solitude, you must be able to summon yourself by yourself, otherwise you will only know how to be lonely. I think this is such an important concept that nobody talks about enough. This idea of being able to sit and be alone with yourself comfortably. it's something that I had to work at, and it's something that I can now happily say that I can do. But I will admit that I am huge on distraction as well, and technology has made it so easy for us to distract ourselves for hours. So we no longer have to sit there with our own thoughts and do that inner work, because we can just avoid it so easily. We can just pick up our phone, we can go on the computer, we can log onto our console or whatever. And technology's just made it easier than ever to avoid work on ourselves. And that's a huge problem, and will continue to be a problem until it's addressed. On page 294, it's close to the end, and it's kind of the last point that I wanted to make, and I think kind of a reassuring closing thought on all of these kind of doom and gloom ideas that I've been mulling on, around this whole idea of technology and addiction and everything. Around page 294, they talk about how the net and our relationship with technology is still very young, and it's all still very new, and that gives me hope that maybe there is still time to recognize issues and correct them before they just become so normal that nobody questions it at all. I think it's really up to us and up to our kids, but mostly up to us, because our parents don't really know much about tech for most of us. My parents aren't really the best with tech. They're in their 50s. And I personally, I'm decently knowledgeable with tech and fluent in technology, but it's really up to our generation and the generation after us to decide how our relationship moving forward with technology is going to be. And it's an important decision to make. One that requires a lot of discussion, I think, from a lot of different kinds of people. But yeah, that's all I really had to say. I enjoyed the novel a lot, and I think that issues like this are going to be talked about more and more the closer we grow with technology. So yeah, thanks for taking time to watch, and I can't wait to see everybody else's thoughts.